Hi, and welcome to yet another video in AI and C#. Today is another video about MCP. So actually, as such, it's not about AI, but about exposing tools to AI. In my past video, I showed MCP using local and ASP.NET Core. But if you want a really cheap option to host your MCP server, you can also do it with Azure Functions, and it's very, very easy to get going. So this is what we're going to cover today. So in my AI samples, which is a public repo you can access, I have a new server here called remote server using Azure Function. And this is just a normal Azure function with one extra NuGet package. And that extra NuGet package is this Microsoft Azure Functions Worker Extensions MCP. You can see it's in a preview, so you need to use the pre-release in order to get it. For now, it's a little funky to set up. I hope they can streamline it a bit over time, but it is possible to work with. So what you need to do once you have this extra in here is you need inside your program CS to say enable MCP tool metadata. If you do that, it is ready, but you don't have any tools enabled. And for that, you need to use these configure MCP tool, where you need to give it a name. And in my case, I have two tools, one that doesn't take any parameters and one that takes two parameters. So in here, we just need to give strings for the tool names and so on, but because we also need them in the functions themselves, I made a little tool definition here, which is just strings. You can choose the format. There's no rules about any of this. But essentially, my first tool is just a name, which is just called my first tool. Can't have spaces in it. And a description of the tool. The second one is, again, a name and a tool description, which is what will be discovered by MCP. And in this case, I'm taking in two numbers, and I'm going to add those together in the code. And whenever you have parameters, we need data types for the parameters for a backend JSON schema. In this case, it's just numbers. So what I'm essentially saying here, hey, Azure function, be MCP enabled, expose a tool called tool1, expose a tool called tool2, and that tool should have parameter 1, parameter 2, which is the number, is a number of each of them. So that takes care of the setup here. And then we make our functions. So a normal function looks a little like this, where we have the HTTP trigger, and we then get some kind of request based on that HTTP trigger. We then write our code and our return value, in this case an OK object. And MCP tools are just the same, but instead of an HTTP trigger, it's an MCP tool trigger. And that's where we use the names again. So I could have written my first tool here and my first tool here, but because they need to be the same, it's easier to have them as constants. So in this case, we are just making the trigger to be MCP tool and give the name and description. We get a object back representing that trigger, which is a context that just have some information about parameters and so on. We don't really use it for anything, but we need to have it here. And in our case, this tool is pretty dumb. It can only say, hi, I'm tool 1. Tool 2 is fairly much the same. We have the trigger, And then we take in 2 parameters, and we need these extra attributes in order to map it whenever it comes in. But we essentially just get 2 parameters, first value, first number, and second number. And we just write back, hi, I'm 2, the 2 numbers together here. This is of course nothing we can really use for anything, but in here you can do whatever. You could call a backend web system, an ERP system, a web service, whatever you want to expose. It can be that you expose a vector store, so you can actually do RAG and such things. And that is everything I have changed in here. And if I run it, we will see, once it's up and running, there we go. So we can now see that the MCP server now has its endpoint. So it's always this /runtime /webhooks/MCP/SSE for server-side events. And the normal function will be there, but we can see the tool triggers are here. And we can't really call them using post and get like normal. So what we need to do is we could go to my little client and use it. But in this case, let's just go to Visual Studio Code or any tool that can work with MCP. And in here, we could go in and say add server and use server-side events and give the URL. I've already done that, and once you do that, you just end up with this. And because we just started the code and it was closed before, you can see it's errored out because it couldn't connect. It's a persistent connection. So when you sit and test like this in a tool, you often need to take this and restart. So now you can see it's have 2 tools, and we can go in and call it. And again, this is a little contrived due to the example, but so right now it just gives I'm tool 1 back and I'm tool 2 back, and we can't really use the agent to write some code on that. But just so we can see, we can say call my first tool. And you can see it now goes in and say, okay, I want the call the my MCP server. This is just the name I give it here. Nothing controlled by the server itself, but by the client. And I can go in and continue running this once or always allow if I trust it to. So now it calls it. We can see the input was nothing because the first tool didn't have anything. And it gave back, hi, I'm the tool. And the LLM inside Copilot used that to say, okay, the response was this. But had the response been order number XYZ is now done, it could have used that for something here. Or if the result back had been some RAG data, it could have used that, figuring out, oh, I need to write the code like this, and so on. Similar, we can call my second tool, and that required 2 values in. So we can say width 23 and 58. And if we do that, you can now see that it will call the second thing, and we can see that it has interpreted that the first number should be 23 and the second number should be 58. And while we're here, let's quickly set a breakpoint so we can see that we can actually also set and debug these things. So if we do this, we hit our breakpoint, we get our first number, our second number, and from here it's just normal C#. Again, just adding 2 numbers together here, but could have been that this was an order number and a customer number and so on from the tool that's now done. So it came back and said that the result was 81. So this is how you do it locally. If you want to do it remotely, you of course need to deploy your Azure function somewhere. I've just done it here in consumption, and I put it to something called remote MCP Azure websites.net. So we might think that, okay, we just need to replace the local host with this new thing, and we can do that. So like this, and we can say restart. Just need to save as well. And this will not work because when something is up in Azure here, despite me not setting any authentication or anything, we need to send in what they call the MCP extension code. And this is a bit annoying, of course, because MCPs, and the way you do this is you write code equals, and that's code we have here, and then we should be able to start. If I save it as well. There we go. So now we have this, and it all depends, of course, is your MCP something secret? So someone should know so you should give this off. But if you have a public MCP, this looks a little dangerous and so on with this strange code. And is this something sending? Is this behind the scenes something evil or something? So in my case, when I make a MCP server like this, I actually go in and change this code, which you can. And I'm just normally, you can call it anything, but I just call it tools because that feels that it's not dangerous at all. It's easier to and pleasing to look at. So I normally do this. But of course, if it's something secret, the code will be the one that actually is the kind of authentication to this. But if I do it like this, I now have the remote, and if I say call my signature with some other numbers, we will not hit our breakpoint this time, but instead we will actually run it online and get the invocation up there. So to summarize, very simple, have a different trigger, use these attributes in order to have the parameters being defined, and configure your tools by enabling the metadata and configuring the tools. Beyond that, all the code you put in there is just normal C# code with any business logic you wish. So very easy, very cheap to run, and my preferred way of making MCP servers for my private stuff. So with that, thank you. See you in the next one.